One of the most telling signs you're dealing with an evil person is their deep-rooted reliance on manipulation and deceit. Unlike someone who might tell a small lie out of fear or anxiety, an evil person uses deception as a core strategy for navigating the world. It is second nature to them, a default setting rather than a rare guilty lapse. They study people carefully, learning their hopes, fears, weaknesses, and desires, not to connect with them, but to weaponize that information later. Conversations with them often feel subtly off, confusing, or contradictory because they are rarely speaking from a place of honesty. Instead, they say what needs to be said to gain your trust, position themselves favorably, or direct your actions in ways that benefit them. Their lies are often layered. It's not just a single falsehood, but a carefully crafted web designed to trap you emotionally and mentally. They might tell you half-truths, omit critical information, or manipulate facts to create false impressions. They may pretend to be vulnerable to elicit sympathy or fabricate stories about others to sow division. Over time, they can lead people to question their own memories and instincts, a tactic known as gaslighting, making the victim more dependent on the deceiver for a sense of reality. What makes their manipulation even more dangerous is how effortlessly they weave it into everyday interactions. They can be incredibly charming, persuasive, and even seem trustworthy at first glance. Their charm is strategic, not genuine, a tool to lower defenses and prepare for deeper exploitation. Because of how skilled and practiced they are, many people don't realize they're being manipulated until significant damage has been done, emotionally, socially, financially, or otherwise. Therefore, it's crucial to pay attention not just to words, but to patterns of behavior over time. Trust is something they will eagerly seek to gain quickly, but their consistent manipulation ultimately reveals their true intentions. A chilling trait of truly evil individuals is their ability, and often eagerness, to derive satisfaction from the suffering of others. While most people experience discomfort or sadness when witnessing someone else's pain, an evil person feels something very different, a twisted sense of joy, power, or superiority. This pleasure can manifest subtly or overtly, depending on how brazen they are, or how much they think they can get away with. You might notice it in the way they smirk when someone fails, or in how they seem unusually energized when relaying bad news about others. Instead of expressing sympathy, they might cloak their enjoyment behind thinly disguised words of concern while inwardly relishing the misfortune. Sometimes they will even go out of their way to create or exacerbate suffering, setting traps or stirring conflict just to watch the chaos unfold. What makes this behavior particularly dangerous is how well they hide it under socially acceptable masks. They might frame their cruelty as just being honest or claim they are simply telling it like it is, masking their sadistic delight in cruelty as bluntness or humor. They often pick at people's insecurities, attacking where it hurts most, and if called out, they will often claim it was just a joke. Another layer of manipulation designed to make the victim feel overly sensitive or unreasonable. In more extreme cases, these individuals may become obsessed with controlling or ruining others. They might sabotage relationships, careers, or reputations through lies, rumors, and betrayal, not because it benefits them materially, but because witnessing the destruction gives them a grim sense of empowerment. They feel bigger, more important, and more in control when they see others brought low. It's important to realize that this enjoyment of pain doesn't always look loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's in small, cutting comments meant to slowly erode someone's confidence. Sometimes it's passive, a satisfaction in simply doing nothing while someone else suffers, even when they could help. The defining factor is the consistent lack of compassion paired with a visible or detectable sense of gratification in others' hardships. One of the clearest warning signs that you're dealing with an evil person is their complete unwillingness to accept responsibility for their actions. Everyone makes mistakes. That is human. But what separates the ordinary from the truly dangerous is how they respond when faced with their own wrongdoing. Evil individuals, instead of admitting fault, instinctively choose denial, deflection, and blame shifting as their go-to strategies. When caught in a lie, they will twist the narrative so convincingly that the real issue becomes obscured. They might claim they were misunderstood, that you're overreacting, or even that you somehow caused the problem. In their world, accountability is for others, never for themselves. They craft elaborate excuses, manipulate facts, and sometimes even manufacture entirely false versions of events to protect their image and avoid facing consequences. These individuals often project their own faults onto others. If they are dishonest, they will accuse others of lying. If they betray someone's trust, they might insist it was the victim's fault for being too trusting. By doing this, they not only avoid blame, but also further destabilize their victim's sense of reality and confidence. This repeated shifting of guilt can be deeply damaging over time, leading those around them to question their own judgment and even take on guilt that doesn't belong to them. Another tactic they use is playing the victim. They paint themselves as the ones who have been wronged, misunderstood, or persecuted, even when evidence points clearly to their guilt. They seek sympathy and protection by framing themselves as innocent and wounded, manipulating those around them into offering support instead of holding them accountable. Over time, their refusal to take responsibility creates a toxic environment where no progress or healing can occur. Trust deteriorates because problems are never genuinely addressed. Growth becomes impossible because there is never any sincere reflection or apology. Instead, cycles of harm repeat themselves endlessly, fueled by the evil person's determination to protect their ego at any cost. Recognizing this pattern is crucial. People who cannot or will not acknowledge the harm they cause are not only dangerous to others, but are also fundamentally incapable of genuine relationships built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect. A particularly sinister trait of evil individuals is their deliberate exploitation of kindness. Where most people see kindness as a virtue, a bridge to deeper connection and trust, evil people see it as an opportunity, a weakness they can take advantage of for their own gain. Rather than being inspired by the compassion of others, they are emboldened by it, calculating how best to use it to manipulate, control, or extract benefits. They are expert observers. They pay close attention to the people around them, quickly identifying those who are generous, empathetic, and forgiving. These qualities, which should be celebrated, become targets for exploitation in the hands of an evil person. They know that a compassionate individual will likely give them the benefit of the doubt, offer multiple chances, or be reluctant to set hard boundaries. Evil people weaponize this predictability to insert themselves deeper into the lives of those they intend to use. They often present themselves initially as needing help, understanding, or patience. They might play the role of the wounded soul, sharing tales of past hardships or betrayals to earn sympathy. They use stories of victimhood, whether true, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated, to bypass your natural defenses and foster a quick, undeserved intimacy. Once your guard is lowered, they begin to manipulate emotions, ask for favors, extract resources, and demand loyalty, all while giving very little, if anything, in return. The exploitation doesn't always come in obvious forms. Sometimes it's small requests that grow larger over time. Other times, it's constant emotional dumping, where they unload their problems onto others without any real concern for the listener's well-being. They create a dynamic where the good-hearted person feels responsible for their happiness, their success, or even their survival, twisting compassion into a burden. What makes this exploitation particularly cruel is that it often leaves the victim doubting themselves. Good people naturally want to believe the best in others, and when they're used and discarded, they often question whether they were too trusting. Evil individuals count on this self-doubt to keep their victims entangled longer, ensuring that the cycle of manipulation continues. True evil doesn't always show up in grand cinematic gestures. Sometimes it's the quiet, calculated draining of a good person's spirit, the slow erosion of trust, self-esteem, and energy, all carried out behind a mask of need, vulnerability, or friendship. It's vital to recognize when kindness is being used not as a bridge to connection, but as a tool for control and exploitation. At the heart of truly evil behavior lies a profound absence of genuine empathy. While they may outwardly mimic emotional responses, smiling when appropriate, offering a comforting word when socially expected, these gestures are hollow. They are strategic, rehearsed performances designed to blend in or manipulate not true reflections of internal compassion. Real empathy requires the ability to truly feel for another person's experience, to connect emotionally with their joys, their sorrows, and their struggles. Evil individuals, however, are emotionally disconnected from others' pain, viewing it not as something to alleviate, but as something to exploit or ignore. They understand emotions in an intellectual sense. They know when someone is supposed to feel sadness, anger, or fear. And they are often highly skilled at using that knowledge to manipulate emotional situations to their advantage. But they do not experience genuine concern for how their actions impact others. If they comfort someone, it is often because they see an opportunity to gain trust or create a sense of indebtedness. If they appear to mourn someone's hardship, it is usually because doing so serves their image or helps maintain a facade of goodness. You can often detect the lack of true empathy by observing how they behave over time, especially when they have nothing to gain. An evil person may show outward sympathy when an audience is watching, but display cold indifference when no benefits are attached. Their reactions to others' suffering may seem delayed, overly theatrical, or insincere. Deep down, their primary focus remains on themselves, their own needs, their own emotions, and their own agenda. Others are merely players on the stage of their life, tools to be used or discarded based on convenience. Another indicator is their response to situations where empathy would naturally arise. When someone is in pain, most people instinctively offer support, comfort, or simply their presence. Evil individuals, however, may react with irritation, boredom, or even subtle satisfaction. They might dismiss the person's feelings as weakness, mock them privately, or quickly steer conversations back to themselves. Over time, their consistent inability to genuinely connect with or prioritize the emotional needs of others leaves a trail of broken relationships, betrayed trusts, and deeply wounded individuals. True empathy creates community, understanding, and healing. Its absence creates isolation, confusion, and harm. Evil individuals, by lacking this vital human trait, make it impossible to form authentic reciprocal relationships. Instead, their interactions are marked by emotional manipulation, exploitation, and superficial displays of care that crumble under scrutiny. One of the most deceptive and dangerous characteristics of evil individuals is their ability to hide behind a charming, likable exterior. They understand that in order to manipulate, deceive, and exploit effectively, they must first gain trust and admiration. Thus, they often cultivate a persona that appears warm, charismatic, and trustworthy, a carefully constructed mask designed to conceal their true intentions. This charm is rarely accidental. It is deliberate, practiced, and strategic. Evil people know how to say the right things at the right time. They know how to mirror the emotions, interests, and attitudes of those they want to influence, making it seem as though a deep connection is forming naturally. They present themselves as exceptionally attentive, generous, or even vulnerable, tailoring their behavior to what will be most appealing to their target audience. In the early stages of a relationship, whether personal, professional, or social, they often seem almost too good to be true. They might shower their targets with praise, compliments, attention, or acts of kindness, creating a sense of indebtedness or emotional attachment. Because they are so convincing, many people ignore the small red flags, the inconsistencies in their stories, the occasional flashes of coldness, or the subtle manipulation, believing instead in the charming facade presented to them. However, over time, cracks in the mask inevitably begin to show. The charm fades once the evil person believes they have secured control over the relationship or no longer need to maintain appearances. Their true nature emerges in small moments of cruelty, manipulation, or selfishness. Yet because their initial presentation was so overwhelmingly positive, victims often find themselves doubting their instincts, rationalizing bad behavior, or clinging to the belief that the real person is the charming one they first met. This dual nature makes evil individuals especially dangerous. They create confusion and cognitive dissonance in the minds of those around them, making it difficult to reconcile the person they thought they knew with the hurtful reality they are now experiencing. Victims often feel isolated, as others may still be enchanted by the public persona and unable to believe the private horrors. It's critical to remember that genuine kindness and charm are consistent over time, especially under pressure or when no advantage can be gained. In contrast, the charm of an evil person is a tool, a means to an end, and is ultimately unsustainable without continual reinforcement through manipulation, deceit, and emotional control. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious weapons in an evil person's arsenal. It is a psychological tactic designed to make another person doubt their own memory, perception, and sanity. Rather than arguing openly or taking responsibility, the evil individual subtly and persistently undermines their victim's confidence in their own judgment. Over time, this erosion of self-trust leaves victims confused, anxious, and increasingly dependent on the manipulator for validation and truth. At its core, gaslighting involves denial, contradiction, misdirection, and lying. An evil person will blatantly deny things they have said or done, even when there's clear evidence. They might dismiss a victim's feelings as overreactions or imaginations, telling them they're too sensitive, misremembering, or crazy. They may also twist facts or reinterpret events in a way that paints them as the victim and the other person as the aggressor. This constant rewriting of reality creates a disorienting environment where the victim no longer trusts their instincts, memories, or emotions. Gaslighting is rarely an isolated act. It is a pattern of behavior that happens gradually, making it difficult to recognize at first. Early on, the manipulator might deny minor details, small inconsistencies that seem almost inconsequential. As trust is undermined, the gaslighter escalates to bigger lies and larger distortions of reality. They might convince the victim that their friends or family are against them, that they're incapable of making sound decisions, or that they are inherently flawed and unworthy. The evil person's goal is control. By destabilizing the victim's sense of reality, they create a dependency where the victim feels they need the manipulator's version of the truth to function. They become more isolated, less sure of themselves, and more willing to submit to the evil person's influence. In some cases, victims may even apologize for wrongs they didn't commit or defend the very person who is causing them harm. What makes gaslighting especially cruel is that it exploits a basic human need, the need to make sense of the world and trust one's own mind. Being gaslit can lead to deep emotional and psychological scars, including anxiety, depression, and severe self-esteem issues. The evil person, however, feels no remorse. Their only concern is maintaining dominance, protecting their lives, and furthering their agenda. Recognizing gaslighting requires vigilance and self-trust. It's essential to remember that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and honesty, not confusion, fear, and constant self-doubt. In environments where you are consistently questioning your reality, it is often a sign that someone's deception is not just casual, but deeply malicious. A defining feature of truly evil individuals is an inflated sense of entitlement and an unwavering belief in their own superiority. They operate under the assumption that they are inherently better, more important, or more deserving than those around them. This entitlement is not a momentary lapse or a result of temporary success. It is a constant, deeply ingrained mindset that colors every interaction, every relationship, and every decision they make. This sense of superiority manifests in numerous ways. They may believe that the rules that apply to others do not apply to them. Laws, ethical standards, and social norms are seen as inconveniences to be bypassed or manipulated whenever necessary. If they break the law, betray a friend, or act immorally, they feel justified, as though their brilliance, suffering, or ambitions excuse them from basic human decency. Evil individuals often walk into situations expecting special treatment. They expect to be praised without merit, prioritized without reason, and forgiven without apology. When they don't receive the admiration or submission they believe they deserve, they react with outrage, contempt, or calculated revenge. They cannot tolerate being questioned, challenged, or held accountable because in their minds, they are beyond reproach. This belief in their own superiority also leads them to view others not as equals, but as tools or obstacles. People are either there to serve their needs or are in the way of their desires. As a result, they feel no genuine loyalty or empathy. They may pretend to care about others, but only insofar as it helps them maintain control or achieve their goal. The moment a person ceases to be useful or worse threatens their inflated self-image, they are discarded or attacked without hesitation. In conversation, they may subtly or openly belittle others. Their opinions must always be the most intelligent, their experiences the most profound, their hardships the most tragic. They dominate discussions, dismiss alternative viewpoints, and show little genuine interest in what others think or feel. Even in moments where humility or gratitude would be natural responses, they find ways to center themselves and elevate their status. Underneath this grandiosity often lies deep insecurity, a fear that they are not as exceptional as they claim to be. But rather than confronting this vulnerability honestly, they build towering defenses of arrogance and entitlement to shield themselves. This psychological armor makes them rigid, inflexible, and resistant to any form of true growth or change. When dealing with a person who exhibits these traits consistently, it becomes clear that their superiority complex isn't just arrogance. It's a profound and dangerous detachment from the humanity that binds us all. Their entitlement and belief in their own greatness give them the justification in their own minds to manipulate, harm, and exploit without remorse. An evil person harbors a deep and unwavering need for vengeance, particularly in situations where they feel wronged, even in the slightest or most trivial way. The concept of forgiveness or letting go is foreign to them. To them, every minor offense is a personal attack that must be avenged, no matter how disproportionate the response. This need for revenge isn't just about justice or balancing scales. It's about maintaining power, control, and a sense of superiority over others. The act of punishing those who have crossed them becomes an obsession, a way for them to assert dominance and to feel justified in their behavior, no matter how cruel or extreme. What sets an evil person's desire for revenge apart is the intensity and persistence with which they pursue it. For them, even a small slight, a forgotten compliment, a harsh word, or a perceived betrayal can trigger a deeply disproportionate response. Their sense of pride is so fragile that they cannot bear the thought of being slighted in any way, and they will obsess over the offense, often for years. Rather than seeking resolution or understanding, they focus solely on retribution. In some cases, this vengeance is calculated and cold. Evil individuals are often very patient when it comes to achieving revenge, taking their time to plan and execute their actions in a way that maximizes the harm they cause. They may bide their time, appearing calm and unbothered on the surface, all while meticulously orchestrating the downfall of the person who wronged them. When they strike, it can be swift, brutal, and, most importantly, deeply effective in ensuring the target knows exactly why they're suffering. Other times, the quest for vengeance manifests in smaller, more passive-aggressive ways. Instead of open confrontation or retribution, they might engage in silent treatment, sabotage, or underhanded manipulation to undermine the person who has wronged them. These subtle attacks are intended to leave the victim feeling uncertain, isolated, and unable to defend themselves. The victim may never even know they are under attack until they feel the consequences, and by then it's often too late to repair the damage. What makes this trait especially dangerous is that an evil person's sense of justice is warped and disproportionate. The punishment they seek is rarely related to the actual offense. It's more about making an example of the person who dared to challenge their sense of entitlement. They will seek to hurt, humiliate, or destroy those who they believe have slighted them, often to a degree that can ruin relationships, careers, or even lives. Even if someone apologizes, their need for revenge is not about finding closure or peace. It is about exerting control and ensuring that no one ever dares to stand in their way again. The deeper their vindictiveness, the less likely they are to show any mercy or forgiveness, even when they've been offered it. In relationships, this revenge-driven mentality can leave long-lasting scars. Victims often feel trapped in a cycle of tension and fear, always walking on eggshells, worried that a simple misstep could lead to another act of retaliation. The evil person keeps their targets on edge, using the threat of vengeance to manipulate and control every aspect of their interactions. At the core of an evil person's behavior is a relentless drive to manipulate everything and everyone around them for personal gain. Their primary concern is always their own agenda, whether it's gaining power, control, resources, status, or even emotional satisfaction. They have no moral compass to guide their actions, no sense of ethical boundaries that would stop them from using others as mere pawns in their grand scheme. The people they interact with are tools to be used, exploited, and discarded once they have served their purpose. Manipulation for an evil person is a subtle and sophisticated art. They are often highly skilled at reading others, identifying vulnerabilities, and knowing exactly what buttons to press to get the desired outcome. They can shift between different tactics depending on the situation: flattery, guilt tripping, playing the victim, or even using intimidation and threats. No method is too low for them if it means getting what they want. Their charm can be disarming, their demeanor calm, and their words well chosen. But underneath it all is a calculated strategy for bending others to their will. This manipulation is not a one-off act. It's a constant, ongoing effort to maintain control over others. They might convince someone to make a decision that benefits them, whether it's getting someone to lie, cheat, or even betray someone else. They are experts at planting seeds of doubt, confusion, or fear, which makes it easier to sway others to their side or make them believe that acting in a certain way will be in their best interest. They'll manipulate others' emotions, twist their perceptions of reality, and use any available leverage to secure the outcome they want. The manipulation often extends beyond individual relationships and into larger social or professional dynamics. For example, they might manipulate group dynamics, sowing discord among friends, colleagues, or family members in order to isolate their target and gain more control over them. In work or social settings, they could use charm to elevate themselves at the expense of others, taking credit for achievements or spreading rumors to discredit those they see as rivals. In some cases, they will deliberately place people in compromising or vulnerable situations, only to later exploit that situation to their advantage. What makes this manipulation especially dangerous is that it is often so skillful that others may not even realize they are being manipulated. Evil individuals are adept at disguising their true intentions with a veneer of concern or friendship. They may appear generous, helpful, or understanding, all the while using every interaction as a means to gain something. The victim may begin to question their own behavior, unsure whether they are truly being manipulated or if they are simply too sensitive, furthering the control the manipulator has over them. Over time, this manipulation erodes trust and leaves a trail of emotional damage in its wake. People start feeling uncertain of their own judgment, second-guessing their interactions, and feeling emotionally drained. The manipulator's agenda may become the dominant force in the relationship, whether personal, professional, or familial, making it harder for the victim to assert their own needs or desires. In extreme cases, it can lead to a complete loss of self-worth, as the manipulator works tirelessly to make the victim believe they are the problem, not the manipulator. The evil person's disregard for the consequences of their actions makes them unpredictable and dangerous. They will knowingly hurt others if it serves their purpose, whether it's damaging reputations, breaking hearts, or even causing direct harm. They are willing to sacrifice the well-being of others, sometimes for nothing more than personal amusement or because they simply view others as disposable. The end goal is always the same: to shape the world and the people around them in a way that benefits them, with little to no concern for the fallout or the damage left behind. In conclusion, understanding the signs of evil behavior is crucial for protecting ourselves and others from those who seek to manipulate, harm, and control. The 10 traits we've discussed, from their charm and calculated manipulation to their complete lack of empathy and sense of entitlement, highlight the destructive nature of these individuals. They prey on kindness, exploit vulnerabilities, and leave a trail of emotional and psychological destruction in their wake. However, recognizing these signs is only the first step. The next step is to take action, to set boundaries, protect our mental and emotional well-being, and stand up against injustice, whether in personal relationships, workplaces, or communities. We must learn to trust our instincts, support those who may be victims of evil behavior, and never allow these harmful individuals to continue unchecked. The key to overcoming the power of evil lies in our ability to recognize it, expose it, and ultimately remove it from our lives. Only then can we foster environments of trust, love, and genuine human connection. Let's empower ourselves and those around us to reject manipulation and deceit and instead embrace honesty, integrity, and compassion as the foundations of every relationship. Thank you.